Hello, today we are discussing my two favorite topics, blush and drugstore makeup. I feel like I've tried almost every single blush formula at the drugstore that is cruelty-free, so in today's video, I have decided to separate this into different categories to make it as helpful as possible. So you can find chapters and timestamps for cream, liquid, powder, and powders that are glowy, because we've got the matte powders and we've got the glowy powder blushes. They're different. And then in each section, I have categorized them from most inexpensive to most expensive. Okay, let's jump in. We are going to start off with cream blushes, and the most inexpensive cream blush that I have to mention is actually one of the only blushes that I don't have in the moment to show you, but this comes from e.l.f. This is their Putty Blush formula, and it retails for $7. I don't like this, okay? I know that might be a hot take. However, I think there are better cream blush options at the drugstore. Yes, this is one of the most inexpensive, but I do think it's worth spending a few dollars more to try another one I'm going to recommend. My issue with the e.l.f. Putty Blush formulation is that it just fades on me so quickly. I run into the same problem with the Putty bronzers. I just don't really vibe with that line. I think they're easy to work with, yes, but the payoff that I'm getting from the product in terms of pigmentation and longevity is just not there. Even at that affordable price tag, I think there are better alternatives. I know that's a hot take. I also found that the blush was a little bit difficult for me to blend out. It would do some kind of like weird things with my foundation. Overall, not my favorite formula. One that I like more is new to me from Milani. This is called the Cheek Kiss Blush. Now, funny enough, they also have the Cheek Kiss blush as a liquid, and we'll get there. But this is the cream formula, and this retails for $11. I have mine in the shade Coral Crush. If you're looking for a cream blush like in a pot like this to kind of pick up with a brush or a sponge in a similar format to the e.l.f. one, this is $4 more, but I think it's worth the price increase. First of all, the pigmentation on this really wowed me. Like, if you want to build this up, you absolutely can, but I also find that it shears out really well also if you want something slightly more desaturated. I get a better blend with this, better longevity. I think it looks incredibly natural and skin-like on the cheeks. Such a fantastic formula at the drugstore, and honestly, I think these are kind of underrated, even by myself. Like, this is new to me. I waited forever, I feel like, to try it, and this I think is much better than the Putty blushes. Let's also talk about this one from Flower Beauty. This is their Gel Cheek Blush. It comes in basically a deodorant little packaging. It retails for $11.49, which I found funny because we do have Flower Beauty blushes to talk about in most of the other categories. And even the liquid and the powder, they are all $11.49. And this formulation I like if you're after an incredibly dewy finish, like almost a little bit balmy to the touch. You would like this. I didn't keep this. I actually gave it to my mom and she does enjoy it. The texture is definitely a bit different than the Milani. You have almost that tacky finish to it. So I think if you're into that really balmy, glowy, dewy look, you might enjoy this formulation, but my top recommendation out of the creams would be this one. So let's talk about liquid blushes at the drugstore. Starting with the most inexpensive that I have to mention, this is also the worst. This is from Essence. This is their What a Tint Lip and Cheek Tint. So this is a multi-use product that's supposed to be wonderful on your cheeks and your lips. It's only wonderful on your lips, according to me. I find that this will not, does not, cannot blend out on the cheeks. Like, where you place this down, it's going to stay. And I've tried every which way possible. I've tried applying it directly to my cheeks. I've tried picking it up with a brush. I've tried it with my fingers. I've tried it with a sponge. I've tried it without foundation, with foundation. It's just a bad product. It's beautiful on the lips. And like, it's one of those that if you try extra hard and bend over backwards and do a backflip, like maybe you can make it kind of work. But I hesitate to recommend a product that comes with that many stipulations of like, maybe it'll work if you do these 10 things. No, it's just not even worth the $5 price tag, in my opinion, unless you are only using it as a lip stain. It's pretty on the lips. The second most inexpensive is my favorite out of the liquid blushes, spoiler alert, but it is from Makeup Revolution. This is their Super Dewy Liquid Blush. I must start off by warning you that the name is incredibly inaccurate. This is a pretty matte formulation. I wouldn't say it's a flat matte, but the name Dew is incredibly misleading. There is nothing dewy about this finish. This formulation I would not describe as beginner friendly though, because the pigmentation is pretty extreme. So a little bit goes a long way, but because of that, the wear time on this is phenomenal. Like, one of the best out of the video. Like, you will apply this in the morning, you're still gonna see it by the end of the day. Even though blush tends to fade fastest, I find that this one wears very well. The shade that I have is You Had Me at First Blush. It's a very, very bright pink. So if you're into a bold color like this, I think this one is pretty. I don't love the packaging of it because you do have this little spout. You kind of have to like squeeze it out. It's maybe not the most convenient, but the formulation is the best. One that I would actually describe as relatively similar to that is the NYX Sweet Cheeks blush formula. Now this one, I prefer the packaging of because you open it up and it has a doe foot, similar to a liquid lipstick almost. And this also has a really high pigmentation level, good wear time on it. These two, honestly, very similar formulas. However, the Makeup Revolution is $7, like I said, and the NYX is $9.50. I do really enjoy this. I think it comes in a nice range of shades, great wear time to it. I feel like these were super hyped up for a while there, but for good reason. This is a really wonderful formula. But again, I don't know that either of these are incredibly beginner friendly. Instead, if you're looking for something a little bit more beginner friendly, I would recommend this or the next one I'm going to mention. So this is the Milani Cheek Kiss Liquid Blush. So we talked about the Cheek Kiss Cream. This is the liquid counterpart. It also retails for $11, and I have mine in the shade Berry Smooch. This reminds me so much of the Say liquid blushes. So if you're looking for that finish, it sheers out well, but it's super dewy and kind of remains that dewy finish on the cheeks. That's what this is. So this doesn't have the same longevity that these more matte options do, but it provides more of that natural dewy skin-like finish. This, in comparison to these two as well, oh, my hair's everywhere, but this is definitely more of a formula that can be sheared out, whereas these two have a lot more pigment to the formula. Like they almost feel like a liquid lipstick in terms of consistency, whereas this one has more of that gel texture to it. Now, similar but even more gel-like is this one from Flower Beauty, which I would categorize as the most beginner-friendly option that I have in the liquid blush formula. This retails for $11.49, as all of their blushes do, and I have mine in the shade Bubbly. You do have a similar applicator to the Makeup Revolution and the Milani. They all have this little squeeze spout to them. Now, this one I would say shears out the most, the Flower Beauty option. So if you're looking for something really blendable, I would opt for this one. Out of all of the liquid blushes I have to mention though, this one has slightly less longevity. Actually, you know what? I would say it has more longevity than the Milani. But these two formulations, because they sheer out a little bit, because they're not as matte, they don't last quite as well on the cheeks if that is your number one goal. Moving into my favorite category, I prefer powder blushes, but I have split these up into matte powder blushes and glowy powder blushes because there is a difference. So let's start with matte. The most inexpensive option is going to be this from CoverGirl. This is their Cheekers blush formula. Price point for this, I wrote down between $4 and $7 because I see it marked differently at every retailer. I think they might be phasing this out, which would be sad. So with this, first thing I want to note, you get very little product. Look how tiny this is. It is 3 grams. To compare to one that I'm going to talk about from Catrice, this is 5.5 grams. To compare to this one that I will soon be talking about from Burt's Bees, it is 5.38 grams. So something to keep in mind if you're someone that completely uses up makeup. If you don't, maybe that's less relevant, but I do want to note it. So the thing about this also is a little bit of a skinny pan, so it's harder to dip your brush into. So this formulation I really like, but it's very buildable. So I would say it's probably best suited to someone with a lighter skin tone because you're not getting that maximum pigment when you're picking it up on the brush. It builds a little bit slower. So personally, I like that because I have that control there, but I could see it maybe not being the best formulation for everyone. This also is definitely a drier powder. It doesn't have that creamy texture that some powder blushes can. That being said, I really like it. I wear it often, but I do want to note that it is called Pink Candy. That's the shade that I have. It's one of those fun bubblegum pinks that's like super trendy right now. This one's really beautiful. Second most inexpensive is maybe one of my favorites. This is new to me and I fell in love with it instantly. This is from Catrice. This is their Air Blush Matte. So they also have the air blushes with like a glowy version, but this is the matte. I have the shade Peach Heaven, and I'm getting back into peach blushes lately, so this shade I'm really digging. I'm actually wearing this today as blush number 1, and then I have a glowy blush over top. But this, wow, I cannot recommend highly enough. This one retails for $6. This, first things first, it has some kick up to it. So when you dip your brush into it, you are gonna notice a little bit of powder. And I also find that it has pretty good payoff immediately. So for myself, I'm like really trying to like tap off the brush before I apply it, because you can go a little bit too much or like get a bit too much product. But depending on your preference, you may love or hate that. I really, really like this formula. Good longevity, sits well on the cheeks for being a powder. I don't think it looks dry. I don't think it emphasizes any texture. I think it looks incredibly smooth, and it doesn't look flat, even though it is a matte blush. Okay, another favorite. I really love matte powder blushes, as you will see, but this is from Burt's Bees. This is their blush in the shade Shy Pink. This one retails for $10. First thing I want to note is this pan falls out. At first I thought maybe it was just mine, but I have so many subscribers say the same thing, so that's a little bit of a bummer, but not a huge deal. I used to have this in Toasted Cinnamon, which was like the viral shade years ago, and that one didn't work on my skin tone, but now that I have Shy Pink, I reach for this so much. This is another matte powder that really has that creamy texture to it. Even though it is matte, I think it sits really beautifully on the skin. It does not look dry. It doesn't look flat. Like, beautiful blush, good wear time. I would highly, highly recommend this one. This next blush, it feels like something must have been leaking on this in my makeup drawer because it feels a little oily, but I have a mini version of this, but the full size retails for $11. This is from Milani. You might have noticed all their blushes across all formulations, they're all $11 because we do have one more Milani blush to mention when we get into the glowy powders, but this is their Romantic Rose blush in the shade, no, I said that backwards. This is their Rose Powder Blush in the shade Romantic Rose. This is such a beautiful nude, kind of mauve-y shade. I could see a lot of people really gravitating to this color. This reminds me so much, and I've compared it as not a like exact dupe, but very similar product to the Tarte Amazonian Clay blush formula. In terms of that silky texture, the way it sits on the skin, you can definitely build it up, but I wouldn't say it has as much like pigment right away as something like this Catrice one. Definitely a silky finish to it. I really enjoy this formula. One that is like so similar, I don't have right now, but even looks so similar with the rose embossing, I guess not even embossing, but the texture in the pan that is shaped like a rose, is this one from Flower Beauty. This is their Flower Pot Blush formula. It retails for, wait for it, $11.49. as all the Flower Beauty blushes do. Honestly, it's so similar to the Milani. I would say whichever one you can get your hands on. They both look nice. They're both creamy, like creamy for being a powder. I don't think any of them emphasize texture. I feel like, I will say, matte powder blushes, for the most part, it's hard to buy a bad one. Like, there are very few matte powder blushes where I'm like, yeah, that was horrible. So this is one category where I'm definitely like, okay, buy that at the drugstore. But the most expensive matte powder blush option is this one from ColourPop. This retails for $12, and this is their pressed powder blush formula. I have mine in the shade Swirled. Again, I'm really into peach blushes. Let me put it next to this one from Catrice that I shared. Kind of similar, but the ColourPop one has a bit more pink to it. The Catrice has a slight more of that orange undertone, but wanted to share for reference because I feel like pink or peach blushes are exploding right now. Okay, the best thing about the ColourPop one, this has the best shade range out of anything you'll see in this video. This has one of the deepest blush shades I have ever seen a makeup brand come out with, so would highly recommend it off that alone. I also find that this formulation is really easy to work with. It builds a little bit more slowly than some of the other ones. I find that if you just pick it up on your brush, you're not going to get clown cheeks right away. You have to do a layer or two for it to really start to build, which personally I like. You could kind of go either way on makeup. My friend Amanda Z, if you guys watch her, she just did a video about this, about like, what do you prefer? Do you want your makeup to build slowly and you want the more sheared out pigment and to kind of increase it on your own terms? Or do you prefer a product that has that maximum opacity available to it and you work with it to kind of like shear it out and adjust to what you want? I'll leave her video linked down below. But if you sit on the side of like, I want to build products up, I would say the ColourPop, definitely the CoverGirl. And these three I think are also buildable, but you can get more pigment right away with them than these ones. Also at $12 is this formula from the Ulta Beauty collection. That's their in-house brand. Now I have a really deep shade in this, well, deep for me compared to the other ones. This is called Southern Sunset. If you're into the sunburnt look, I think this is a really wonderful shade for achieving that. This is another one, I think it builds well, but you can get some pretty great opacity from it right away, or pretty good pigment, should I say. Now, this is the most expensive, but you are getting very little product, 2.8 grams, so keep that in mind. The good thing about the Ulta Beauty collection, it is always on sale, so I wouldn't even recommend paying full price because they consistently do like buy two, get one free, or buy the whole line half off. I have a lot of favorites from their brand. This blush, while I do enjoy it, I wouldn't say it is my top favorite out of all of the powders. And because it is the most expensive, I might direct you away from that. If I had to choose one powder formula to like recommend the most highly here, it would be this one from Catrice. This is kind of newer, but I really like it. But second choice would probably be ColourPop, especially because it has that beautiful shade range. Like any color that you want, you can get. Let's talk about the glowy powder blushes. So the first one I have to mention, I think is discontinued. It was so strange. This is relatively new, but when I was getting all the info for this video, I couldn't find it anywhere, but then I was seeing it on a few websites. So if you see this in stores, especially at like your local grocery store, because it's an Essence product. And one thing that I found when I lived in Michigan, and Meyer was the grocery store there, I would find like older Essence products that I couldn't get online, but they were still at Meyer. So I was like, let me mention this one just in case, because it is the most inexpensive at $5. This is their Mosaic Blush. Now this doesn't provide as much glow as the next two that I'm going to mention, but it is a matte with like some small little shimmer particles to it, but not in a way that's too intense. Like it looks glowy. It's not super noticeably glittery on the cheeks. It's just a bit more luminous. These were like pretty loved when they came out, so I'm surprised that they were here and gone so quickly. I have the shade 40 Berry Connection, and I do really like this. I won't spend too long on this one because, as I said, I believe it's being discontinued. But if you still see it, I think it's a good formula, especially at that $5 price tag. And perhaps they were phasing that one out for this. This is the newest formula from Essence, and oh my gosh, this is one of my favorite formulas in this whole video. This is their Pure Nude Baked Blush. This is brand new. Well, it's not brand new, that's not true, but it's newer. I have the shade 1 Shimmering Rose, and I just mentioned this in a video about like makeup products that are worth purchasing. I can leave it linked down below. My like idea for that video was like, okay, there's so much coming out, like what stands out? This made its way into the video because it is such a beautiful formula. Very Hourglass Ambient Lighting Blush-esque. So it is like a highlighter blush hybrid, but you know, I'm using a highlighter loosely here because it's not super shimmery and reflective. It's just a natural luminous glow. I like using this as step 2. So I'm extra with my blushes. I like to do more than one on most occasions. So what I typically do is take one of these powder ones, like I'll take a little bit of this matte one from Catrice, do this as the main blush, and then take this more glowy one, kind of where I might put a highlight just so I have a little bit of that lift and a little bit of that glow. You don't need to do that. It's beautiful on its own, but if you like pairing a few, highly recommend. I also have been wearing this a lot lately on top of the ColourPop blush in the shade Swirled. This formulation, it is definitely powdery and it feels dry in the pan, but I don't think it looks dry on the skin. And I also find because the formulation is baked, it looks very smooth. So sometimes a glowy powder can emphasize texture, but that's really the benefit of a baked glowy powder. They're slightly more smoothing on the skin. So cannot recommend this highly enough. Oh my gosh, for $6, it's so good. And it's actually very similar to this other glowing powder blush that is pretty much double the price. This is the Milani Baked Blush, retails for $11. This is like an oldie but a goodie, okay? So this shade I'm actually wearing today. So you're probably waiting this whole video like, what's on your cheeks, what's on your cheeks? This one. This is Milani Luminoso, the OG. I do like this. I think that if you're looking for a product like this, I would say actually buy the Essence because it's about half of the price. And The Essence one I like slightly more. This has a little bit of kick up in the pan, and that's not necessarily a negative, but it's something I want to note. The Essence one I think sits a little bit more smooth on the cheeks. The Milani one, it's still a very good blush. It just, you know, you can see the sparkles a little bit. I think they're so similar, but the Essence beats it out just slightly. And then with the difference in price, like, get this one. Also, the Milani is 3.5 grams and the Essence is 7. So my top choice out of the glowy powders is going to be the Essence. Every single blush is going to be linked down below. I do use affiliate links, so if you choose to shop through them, thank you so much. I really hope this video was helpful, and I will go ahead and see you in my next one. Bye.